Born and raised in Apple Valley, Georgia, Woodrow Stewart, known to most as Woody, was destined to make a difference. Early on, Woody demonstrated a keen mind and hard work ethic that would prove soon to be the foundation of his success in all endeavors. Woody, his childhood friend John Melvin, and childhood sweetheart, the former Linda Ann Trueluck, grew up together and attended Jefferson High School. Woody was quite the four-sport athlete in school, and his hard work and accomplishments were well respected both on and off the field. That work ethic paid dividends sooner rather than later when Furman University offered him a football scholarship. After graduating from Furman in 1960, Woody and Linda married while he served 2 years as a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army. And then he decided to pursue additional education at Tulane Law School and Emory University School of Law, graduating with a Doctor of Jurisprudence degree. Finally, the young couple settled in Gainesville, with Woody pursuing his career in law and Linda in nursing.
My office was on the 5th floor. His was on the 4th floor. So we bumped into each other because he was a brand new attorney in town. I was new at the bank, so we got to know each other that way.
That goes back to probably late December of 1966, early 67. In those days when people would move back to Gainesville or newcomers, everybody lived in the Noda Garden apartments, and Woody was no different, and I wasn't either. We had an apartment there, and one night about 7 o'clock there was a knock on my door, and there stood Woody Stewart, who I did not know, but we found out we had something in common. We both had diesel Mercedes sedans that when it got below about 35 degrees would not crank. They worked off a glow plug. And so he wanted to know what I did, and I was giving him my tricks, and he taught me his tricks. So we commiserated about our Mercedes for some time, and then that started a long, long friendship.
As a young attorney in Gainesville, Joe Telford recruited him from another firm to join him in his practice that would later bear Stewart's name as managing partner. His leadership helped to grow Stewart, Melvin, and Frost into one of the largest law firms in Northeast Georgia. His expertise in tax and estate planning drew respect from his peers and was second to none. For his business acumen, leadership skills, and sound advice, Stewart was sought by numerous organizations to volunteer, and volunteer he did, giving back to the community by serving on numerous boards including ones like McKibben Brothers, First National Bancorp, and Regions Bank. He also served in various community roles, including chairman of the Greater Hall County Chamber of Commerce, Gainesville City Schools Board of Education, and a member of the Northeast Georgia Health System Board.
Well, I think this can be repeated. Years and years ago, I was chairman of the Lanier Park Hospital Board, and Woody was also involved with the Lanier Park at the time. And on one occasion, I had to give a rather involved speech with a lot of medical terms. And I majored in English. I knew no science at all. And so I had them written down. And I read a lot of these words because I just didn't know them otherwise, couldn't pronounce them. Well, after my speech, Woody came up and gave me a hard time about, I think his term was, you're in the big leagues now, you got to quit reading speeches. So I tried to explain to him, why I did it. Well, several years later, at a wedding of both of our friends that had been divorced and had found each other and were getting married, we had at the wedding dinner afterwards, Woody rose to his feet to give a toast, and he used the husband and his first wife's name in his toast. So that brought on gales of laughter, and I explained to Woody, that's why I write it down, Woody. I don't make those mistakes. I remember Doug Stewart punching me when he did it, and he said, and he's supposed to be the brains in the firm here.
To me, he is a role model for people being on boards, because so many board members come on thinking, oh, well, I'm going to serve on that board, but it's just a title thing. That was not the case with Woody. I mean, he was invested.
The biggest thing that I learned from Woody was to listen, but to ask questions. No matter what the subject was about or the discussion, he always said, what questions should we have asked that we didn't ask? What are the questions when we think about enterprise risk management? How many more questions can we ask?
Woody was a driver, and sometimes he and I did not always agree on the course we should take with our client. And in fact, once upon a time, Woody'd only been back in the office about a week and a half from his first heart attack, we were in my office and we were screaming at each other almost. And finally, Mary Moore, who's Woody's secretary, stuck her head in the door and said, "You're going to kill him." And Woody said, "I'm having the most fun I've had in a year." So Woody liked the confrontational. He didn't always want you to agree with him. He was trying to get the best results for the client.
Perhaps his own personal experience drove his passion for healthcare close to home and his devotion to the Medical Center Foundation. During his 14 years leading the foundation as chairman, more than $34 million was raised, including $8 million to support cardiac services.
But probably he had never been as dedicated to any single individual undertaking as he was the Medical Center and the Medical Center Foundation. And his leadership, drive, determination, willingness not to take no as an answer, I think demonstrates a lot about Woody's personality, his values. He was very much in favor of this community having the best health care it could possibly have.
He was so invested in the role of the hospital, the mission of the hospital. And of course, during his time with us, he was responsible and oversaw the raising of $33 million.
You know, the first thing that pops to mind is the Ronnie Green Heart Center and all of his philanthropy related to us developing the cardiac program that has been the #1 program in the state of Georgia for many years. And then there are other programs and services, you know, connected with Ronnie Green, whether it be the Stribling Cardiac Unit, a Sam Jones Observation Unit, of course then the Woody Stewart Heart Failure Treatment Unit that was named after him by so many of his friends that supported him after he had passed away.
When Woody would give his presentations to groups, he used to love to say that the difference between a good hospital and a great hospital was philanthropy. And he would give you an example of that by showing how much money philanthropy had generated and then extrapolate that into how much more revenue the hospital would have to generate in order to have that return on their work. And when you'd hear what that additional revenue was, you knew it was unobtainable. So the only way that the hospital could become a great hospital was through philanthropy. We could not do it through more revenue because there's just so much that we can do. So Woody was a great communicator, and he made that very clear, and I still use that trick.
One word that comes to mind when I think about Woody is sage. Someone who is just revered for their wisdom, their experience, and their intellect. And that to me just captures Woody. He had such a presence, and just what a difference he has made in this community, what a difference he's made in my life and so many other lives that he has touched.
He was a friend. I think most everybody that knew him would call him a friend. He had many, many best friends, but so many people called him their best friend. He was my best friend, and he was 100 other people's best friend. But it was a feeling he could give you. He could just guide you and help you and just make you feel like you were the only person there, the only person that mattered.
The impact of his leadership and generous gifts of time have touched countless lives in Northeast Georgia, and his legacy will last a lifetime.
So I'm sitting in my car, typing this just on my phone. It was just a stream of consciousness. If I stood up at his funeral and claimed him as my special friend, my mentor, my teacher, a man who I wanted so much to be like, at least a dozen men would stand up and claim him in the same manner. In a man's life, one only encounters a few truly extraordinary men who possess an insatiable desire to learn, to know, men who have an amazing mind, yet are fun to be with, who have a big laugh and a big heart, who are humble and not arrogant, who are athletic, who lead and make you want to follow, who demand excellence from you without intimidating you. Woody was that rare man. I was honored to have been his student, his apprentice, and I literally revered him. If you say anything at his funeral, he would want you to say that he was a student.